Wherever you go, death will follow. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Without Remorse. Hello and welcome back to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy fact, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And we are coming to you on a Tuesday this week for a very special, out-of-order bonus episode.
Yes. The movie Without Remorse, based on the Tom Clancy book, came out, like a month ago at this point?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Let's go with that.
Yeah, we wanted to cover it, and so I think this will be a new thing where if there's a movie that catches our interest that came out, in theaters, we're going to try to see if we can cover it the weekend of or week after, so we can try to stay current a little.
Though in this case, we were delayed because we wanted to bring on our resident Tom Clancy fanboy, Lance. And here he is.
Welcome, Lance.
Hi, everybody.
A little bit of behind the scenes. So we're recording this after we've recorded our episode for Clear and Present Danger, but that one will get released later. So if you hear us referring to that, but you have no idea what it is, just wait a few months.
It's well worth the wait.
Yes.
Of course, Lance has read the book. That's why we have him. Have you, Christian?
I have not. I pretty much actually what I know about John Clark, or John Kelly as he is in this most of this movie, is from Clear and Present Danger, and I guess kind of Some of All Fears.
Not Rainbow Sex?
No, I mean, I guess I knew he was like in those games and books, but I never played the games and never read those books.
Okay, so I have a quick story. My grandmother was a big reader. She's read more than anyone else I know. She'd read all the Tom Clancy books. So when I had started reading them, when I went through the Tom Clancy phase, she said, Zach, they're all great. They're all appropriate for you at any age level, but don't read Without Remorse. Do not read it. It's violent. It's sad. It's scary. It's depressing. Just don't do it.
Huh, okay.
So I was always kind of curious what happened in it, and now is a great chance to find out.
As Zach and I were talking before we got started, like this book in particular, you're kind of comparing it to a little bit of Game of Thrones.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
There was a lot of brutality and violence in this book.
And in this movie, so let's get started.
Okay, Here is the IMDb brief synopsis. An elite Navy SEAL, as opposed to all of those non-elite Navy SEALs,
Right.
goes on a path to avenge his wife's murder only to find himself inside of a larger conspiracy.
Okay, so we start, and this is pretty cool. I don't think we know where we are at first. There's just like this body of water. It looks like either a pool or a lake or something. Big, giant puddle of water. And there's soldiers surrounding it. And one by one, they get like pulled into the water and killed.
So this was like Act of Valor. Have you guys seen Act of Valor? We've talked about it briefly,
Yes.
Christian.
Oh, we did?
It's a movie starring real-life Navy SEALs who are not actors, and you can tell they're not actors. No offense to them. Don't come kill me, please. But there's a part where it's very similar to this. There's an enemy guy standing on the edge of a pier, just waiting to be stealth killed. And one of the Navy SEALs shoots him with the silenced gun, and right when he's about to hit the water, another Navy SEAL catches him, and then slowly lowers him into the water. Do you remember that, Lance?
Oh, yeah. Shout out to my cousin Sarah. She actually worked on that movie.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
This happening to more soldiers, and then the Navy SEALs emerge from the water and infiltrate this building. And we get to see our credits of, Without Remorse. And they go from Cyrillic to English, which I thought was a cool transition.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they do that in Hunt for Red October, or Bridge of Spies, or one of these?
I think in Clear and Present Danger, they did something similar, but instead of using letters, they were using ones and zeros.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what this made me think of, there's a scene in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol where, Ethan Hunt can read lips, and he's like knocked out, and people are speaking in Russian, and like the subtitles are in Russian, and then as he sort of gains more clarity, and he can actually read what their lips are saying, it transforms into English subtitles.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Anyway, so we find out this is in Aleppo in Syria, which begs the question of, all right, why Russian if this is Syria? We meet Ritter. That's the character from Clear and Present Danger, right? The one who's played by Henry Czerny, Kittredge from the first Mission Impossible.
Yes, that is that is the same character.
Okay, and we also meet Michael B. Jordan's character, John Kelly. Like I said, not John Clark.
Okay, that confused me. Because they don't call him by his name until like 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And then I was like, who's John Kelly? Why do they keep talking about John Kelly? I also think it's funny. They changed to Michael B. Jordan, who is black, and he still has a very Irish name.
I didn't even think about that.
Right? I mean, they should have called him like Seamus O'Riordan or something. That would have been kind of funny. No, you have to stay true to the book, obviously.
You do, yeah. And so we find out the op is to reacquire a hostage who is a CIA operative and who's being held by the Syrian government. And one of the other people here is Karen Greer, and we'll find out her. Well, but once I heard Greer, I thought, wait, like Jim Greer, like what's his face?
James Earl Jones.
Yeah,
James Earl Jones. How did I forget? Yeah. And so I was like, all right, are they like just doing a gender swap thing? But well, we'll find out.
Yeah, I wondered that exact same thing too.
Because I guess the big thing for me is like, or it was put out by Amazon, but it was supposed to go into theaters. I don't think we actually said that. But it's produced by the same production company that does the Jack Ryan Amazon show.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they're actually ever going to tie in or not, because Jim Greer is in that show.
Oh, we'll definitely talk about that later.
So we meet the rest, or kind of meet the rest of her team. They infiltrate the building. They find the hostage, identify them. John finds out that these soldiers are not Syrian army, but ex-Russian military.
Yes, and it turns out it's also a Russian arms depot. The same place where they're holding the hostage was also, and apparently John really doesn't like this and gets really upset, which I guess is fair enough. But then here's something I want to talk to you guys about.
Okay.
Don't you think the movie kind of would have been improved if this mission had been an assassination mission?
No.
I mean, I don't know about improved. I don't know what it would change really for me.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead. Okay, just remember this point, and we'll talk about it later.
Okay, all right.
How's that?
Yeah.
As they're trying to get the hostage out of there, an RPG knocks a big hole in the floor, and Greer falls through the hole. And Ritter, who's there, he's like, this was interesting for me because Ritter, in my mind, as like Henry Czerny, is not like an ops person. He's like in Langley, just being the office guy.
Oh, it kind of made sense to me a little bit because if you look at it from, or try to put it into a timeline with clear and present danger, this is obviously a
way
backstory.
Before.
So it's taken way before. And with Ritter being the deputy director of operations, it would kind of make sense that he would have some field experience. So I could definitely see him being part of all
that's right. He was deputy director of operations. So you would hope that whoever's in charge of operations actually knows operations.
Right.
It was refreshing to see him not just get pigeonholed into the Weasley guy who's a coward and never does anything, in contrast with our heroes who are brave and tough and go and fight people.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Ritter, he's in the op, and he says the priority is to get the hostage out of there, not to help anyone who's down. So he goes ahead with the rest of the team. John stays behind to help Greer. Zach, I saw that they were using some hand signals. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah, always, of course.
I actually did think of you when I saw that.
And then John takes out his gun. I think either he's out of bullets or his gun jams, and so you have to take out one of them with some knife fighting.
Yeah, this was like a video game where you run out of bullets in your gun, you switch to your pistol, and then your pistol runs out, you switch to your knife. It's like
I was very impressed with his knife fighting. So yeah, and they finally get back to the chopper, and so he confronts Ritter about the fact that they weren't. Not only were they not ex-Russian military, they were not just contractors. They were Russian military. One of his men got killed. To be clear,
right? Which, to be fair, or unfair, depending on your point of view, from this next sentence. The CIA isn't necessarily always forthcoming with what they know. They're fun that way. So, I mean, I can definitely see, Ritter not telling the SEAL team exactly what was going on. And that could, and to be fair to the CIA, that could be for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Obviously, they don't necessarily want to know, or want them to know that, there are Russians involved just in case one of them gets captured or whatever, this, and this. But from Kelly's point of view, I guess we'll still refer to him as John Kelly at this point. There is a distinct difference between fighting probably untrained or even somewhat experienced militia/terrorist, versus hardcore Russian military who have no tactics, know what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I also thought it was weird that Ritter was willing to leave the dead bodies of soldiers and a live soldier in the hands of Russians.
Priority was the hostage.
Right.
But still, well, it's not like they were in the middle of a firefight where time was critical. Not at the exact moment when he had
but they were still in foreign territory.
Mm-hmm.
And probably if they weren't under fire at that moment, they probably could have been soon. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it seemed like manufactured drama. The Act of Valor guys never would have done that.
No, actually, they would have. I mean, they would have tried to do their best, but at the same point in time, you've also initiated a gunfight with multiple explosions in downtown Aleppo. So I mean, there's obviously going to be other people running to the scene to figure out what's going on, especially if in this particular case, these guys were Russians. It was a depot, so there's going to be reinforcements that are coming that are going to just swarm them, and they met their objective. They got the operative out, so on and so forth. The helicopter came in. It's on a certain time schedule too. It's got to be in and out. It can't just linger there. Time definitely in an operation being of the essence. I can definitely see once all possibilities were exhausted of getting them out, of leaving them there.
Cold-blooded, as Jay would say.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. But it's the nature of the beast, I guess.
Okay, so the next bit I have is they get on a helicopter and they fly away, and then we get to see his family at home.
In DC. So, no, this isn't his home. This is someone. I thought this was his home, but it's like a family party somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And we find out that his wife Pam is pregnant. It's a girl. Apparently, John's got an offer to leave the military and work as private security.
Yeah, private security like Blackwater. Oh my goodness!
Not maybe, or private security like being security for a rich billionaire or something. I don't know.
I want to see that movie.
That'd be fun if he was going to do private security for Michael B. Jordan.
Or for Michael Jordan.
Ooh.
But meanwhile, in Charlotte, North Carolina, one of John's other team members is with his family taking out the trash and gets hit by a truck and it doesn't stop. It just like goes straight through him. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, I kind of saw it coming, and I was wondering what would their plan have been if he had looked to the right and saw a truck coming his way.
I mean, probably just, open a door and shoot.
Yeah, presumably.
So we get John and Pam heading back from the party, intercut with Atlanta, where one of John's other team members is driving, home from a bar, and the van in front of him opens up the back of it, and men shoot him and kill him while he's on the phone with his significant other.
Yeah, that reminded me of Patriot Games.
It did. But I actually had two problems with this scene.
Okay.
One is, we had this scene before where they were taking out the other team member, by running him over with the van.
Yeah.
And the reason why I thought they did that was to make it look like an accident.
Right. Yeah.
But you can't make a guy popping out of the back of a van and firing into a windshield with an AK-47 look like an accident. And also, after they did that, it seemed like nobody cared,
except for his significant other on the phone, saying, "What's happening?" But no one else paying attention.
None of the other cars were reacting, and it also seemed like if they're stuck in traffic,
how are they going to get out of there? That's a great question. I didn't even think about that till now.
I'm like, okay, it's like me opening up on somebody on 395 at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm not going anywhere.
So
yeah, that's actually a really good point, Lance. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah. So we go back to John and his wife. So John says, "Okay, I'm gonna go downstairs, listen to some music." So
I call it Beats by John Kelly.
And as he's downstairs, he's listening to his music, someone's cutting the power to the house. We get a few views of night vision of the area. John doesn't notice it at first, but then his computer shuts off.
Yeah, his computer that apparently has no battery power.
I was thinking about that. All right, maybe it had a little bit of battery power, and then he had just plugged it in.
And where have we seen a similar type thing where power gets cut to the house?
Yes, in Patriot Games.
Exactly.
No laptop computers then, though. I thought it would have been kind of cool if the laptop had just slightly dimmed, and then he notices because he's Mr. Super Navy SEAL. He's like, why did it dim? Oh, he looked. No power. Oh, the power's off. I don't know. Maybe they were the audience isn't going to get it.
Maybe not, yeah. I feel like people, at least right now, laptops are always plugged in because they're just at home all the time. John notices, and then he hears people moving around upstairs, quietly sneaks upstairs. And as he's trying to get upstairs, men go into his bedroom and shoot his wife in their bed.
Yes. I thought it would be more super dramatic than that. Now, I admit that it was very realistic and was shocking and how not shocking it was. I'm just surprised that that's the way they chose to portray it.
I don't know. I'm like, because I presume that the fact that his wife and unborn child, or at least just his wife, got killed is part of his backstory in the books too. But I was a little uncomfortable with it just because it's fridging.
It is fridging. That's correct.
Yeah.
It is.
But I don't know.
But if you're going to do it, have it be a big emotional moment because that's what the story's built upon.
Yeah. Fair.
I think they saved that big emotional moment for later.
Mm-hmm.
When, not necessarily to jump ahead, but when Clark comes, or Kelly.
John, yeah. Just say John. When he's always John.
Yeah. When John gets back to the house.
He
crosses the police tape, which, if you look at a timeline, that was a long time for that to still be a crime scene.
Yeah. Well, I get your point. I see your point on that, and I agree with you. And I mean, we also get a more dramatic moment, too, at the end. But the actual killing of her is pretty quick.
Yes. Another thing I wanted to say about this was the bad guys have night vision goggles.
Yeah.
And they look visually similar to the Navy SEALs from before.
I mean, there's only so many types of night vision goggles.
No, I'm aware of that, but it reminded me of Zero Dark 30 coming up this week, plug. And I thought, were they trying to do a duality here? Where it's Navy SEALs going into someone's house to kill a terrorist versus here, where it's bad guys going into his house to kill him and his family.
You know, I was about to say no, and I was going to say they probably only had so many props on hand. But given what happens later in the film, you might be right.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're right. The drama of her getting killed gets undercut by the mystery that we have happened right afterwards. Because the guy who shoots her is then shot, and like willingly shot. He even says in Russian, "I'm ready," by one of the other team members.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of The Dark Knight, except that he didn't know he was about to get killed.
In The Dark Knight.
Right.
But here he knows, and he's all ready to go.
Which is interesting. Yeah.
So John comes up from the basement and gets the drop on a bunch of them, and pretty good action. It kind of reminded me of, not as stylish, but kind of reminded me of part of the first John Wick movie where they're coming after him.
Yeah, all the action was good.
Yeah.
I thought very similar between, the first John Wick when, unfortunately they kill his wife then, and the dog.
The dog.
Killed the dog.
Yes.
Yeah, pregnant wife versus, dog. I can see the similarities there.
Yeah.
There's room enough in the fridge for both.
Oh. Wow.
Well, come on, don't tell me you weren't thinking it.
I was not.
Not even remotely.
But as he's going after the last guy, they both are like shooting at each other, like in like almost like a standoff.
Yeah.
John gets hit in, it looks like the stomach and the shoulder. Other guy gets shot in the leg. He does the very Hollywood thing of, I'm going to shoot you, but I'm actually out of bullets. When that was a pistol, and a lot of those are just going to cock back if there's nothing in the magazine.
Right.
So there would be no situation unless you just had put a fresh magazine in there that happened to be empty.
Especially if, John's a SEAL and the other guy is obviously some type of trained operative. We don't know who or what at this point. You'd think that they would be familiar enough with firearms to realize that they were out of bullets.
Mm-hmm. That's a very Hollywood thing.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, though. Actually, when he pulled the gun out, I thought he was going to kill himself rather than be taken alive.
I also thought about that, yeah.
Instead, he just crawls away and manages to get away.
Does he also take off his mask, too, for some reason?
Yeah, he does.
I don't remember why.
So John can see him, and the plot can happen.
Okay. And here's the dramatic part. Well, one of the two dramatic parts, I guess, is John dragging himself to the bedroom, even though he's, like, severely injured. And he's, like, reaching for his wife and calling out for her, but she's dead. So I think, there's your, if you wanted the drama and the dramatic moment, there's one of them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen so many movies. I was just expecting him to be, like, holding her body and going, no!
But he couldn't. He was physically incapable of doing that.
Yes, because the director chose to make him so, which is fine. Again, I don't have a problem with any of it. I just think it was surprising and different.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they're kind of, I guess, at that point, keeping it consistent with what happened in the book. In a completely different type of situation, John is actually severely wounded from a shotgun blast.
Oh, okay.
So that's at least, like I said, being consistent with a plot point from the book.
Yeah, that'll really mess you up.
John gets brought to the hospital as Ritter is briefing a bunch of brass. Apparently, John Kelly is, severely injured, not expected to live, and the two other members of the team are all dead. And he even makes some sort of allegation that the SEAL team might have been dirty, which Karen Greer, who's there in the meeting, does not take kindly to.
No. And he's like, hey, I'm just considering all the possibilities.
Which felt very much in line with the Ritter that, we've saw from Clear and Present Danger.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So back in the hospital, John is having a dream about his wife being ripped away. It felt like a horror movie kind of thing right there.
I approve.
Yeah. And then John wakes up and Greer is there. And, he asks about his baby. Apparently she didn't make it. The daughter would have only been a month premature. So it is possible that she could have survived.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
So at this point, I start wondering, okay, I've seen this movie before, right? I've seen John Wick. His loved one gets fridged, and he goes on a one-man killing spree. How is this movie going to be different from other revenge movies of that type?
Wow.
And it turns out it is different, and we will see how.
Yeah. So Greer is there, and he says, like, all I want is a name. All I need is a name. And Greer says, even if I knew it, I couldn't tell you. So Greer is in her office, and in comes the Secretary of Defense, I assume.
Yeah.
I guess we don't really find out he's SecDef until much later in the movie.
Like
but
the
I guess
end
just
of the
some
movie.
context clues. I was like, okay, I'm going to presume Secretary of Defense, maybe Secretary of State, but probably Defense.
No, I was thinking that he was either SecDef or possibly even National Security Advisor, because Clancy does like to throw in the NSA.
But do they call those Secretary?
I don't know right off the top of my head, to be honest.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, once they called him Secretary, then I was more like, yeah, okay, that's probably is the SecDef, but...
There are tons of, like, assistant secretaries and undersecretaries and deputy secretaries and...
Probably.
So on.
Or he's the Secretary of the IMF. No. Anyway, so we find out that Clay worked with her uncle, Jim Greer, so hey, that's what the connection is.
It says Jim Greer operative, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so this is further back into the timeline, so it's probably when he was, active.
When he wasn't an admiral yet. Yeah. And then he also says at some point, can John Kelly be trusted? And I was like, who is John Kelly?
Is that when you realized that his name is John Kelly and not John Clark?
Yes, that's when I put two and two together. I don't think they had said his name before that point.
Well, they may have just said John.
Well, sure.
Yeah, but not Kelly. So John's in physical therapy. He's like doing, resistance band training and swimming.
I appreciate that because it's not like our heroes get shot in the arm and then they wear a sling for a couple scenes and then they're fine.
It actually kind of reminded me of a future Clancy Jack Ryan movie that we will cover, which actually has no corresponding book. Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit, where they show him recovering from the helicopter crash. And yes, Lance, we'll make you endure that.
Cool. That famous helicopter crash. I want to see it.
Because of my love and affection for both of you, I will watch Shadow Recruit, and I'll even rewatch Sum of All Fears.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
We love having you on here for your perspectives on this. So we go to Langley, and I think that I mentioned this last time, the rare thing of Langley where they don't show the stars and the seal.
Maybe not so rare. That's becoming more common the more movies we watch.
I guess nowadays they won't do it as much, whereas anytime in the 90s or 2000s, or even the 2010s, it's you talk about Langley, you show the seal, you show the stars. So Greer is coming in and is meeting with Clay and Ritter. Ritter is briefing Secretary Clay on the attacks.
Yeah, I think it's so funny how they have Ritter do all the CIA stuff. Like, there's only one person at the CIA. But I guess you could argue, Lance, before you say anything, you could argue he's like the Navy SEAL CIA liaison.
Could be.
That's my little headcanon. What do you think?
Sure.
Or it could be that since all this is tied in, that you think of it as like a CIA version of a caseworker. That since they're all related in similar things to where he's getting assigned these same spots. Or
Makes sense.
Or he's a particular high-ranking subject matter expert.
Or for the sake of the audience, so we don't have to try to remember another character.
That's probably more to the point.
Spy movies love doing that. Or I think you can kind of tell this movie was sort of made on the cheap.
I don't think so.
I do think so. I think most of the budget went to Michael B. Jordan.
Fair. Oh, I'm actually a little curious. Let's find out.
So while you're looking that up, Ritter's like, okay, so these guys work for the FSB. We've talked about them before. They're getting revenge by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, they declare the matter is closed, like they're not going to respond. And the characters and the audience are like, that is absurd that they would just let them kill Navy SEALs. Lance, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, that's not going to go.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to use the word unpunished.
Unresponded to? Unanswered. How about unanswered?
Yes, that is the more correct word to use. I mean, even if it was diplomatically or whatever, and not necessarily, covert spy versus spy or SEAL versus Spetsnaz kind of thing.
Uh-huh. But don't you think the fact that it's Russia that's a nuclear power, that they're willing to sweep it under the rug to keep relations okay?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely
Really?
not.
Absolutely not.
No.
I was surprised to hear that.
No, I mean, because regardless that, yes, Russia's a nuclear power, but let's also be a little realistic in something. You're not going to start a nuclear exchange over something like this, or even have it escalate to a full-blown shooting war. I mean, I can see more sneaky covert operations versus their version of sneaky covert operations. But yeah, especially they're not going to just drop a matter of Navy SEALs being assassinated on U.S. soil. Yeah, that was just absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad to see my instincts didn't lead me astray in that case.
They did not.
Also, I was trying to think about when this movie was made, because they refer to the CIA director is a woman, and Gina Haspel, former I believe the first female director of the FBI, or of the CIA rather, and so that was just caught my attention.
Okay.
Greer meets with John as he's in physical therapy. Greer now also hates Ritter. It's like, I can see why you almost, punched him back in the chopper.
Well, yeah, she doesn't like that he considered the matters closed, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
She passes along the info that he needs to start his quest.
Yeah, the info being the passports of the 3 dead men. But there's the 4th guy who's still out there. Greer says that the passports were cleared by Andrei Vasiliev? Wait, Vasiliev, yeah.
Yeah, the Russian guy. So she's like, he knows, but he's untouchable. We can't get to him.
Yeah.
But of course, one man acting alone, quote unquote, could.
So John goes back to his house to see the aftermath of it. And this is the other dramatic scene that you were talking about, Lance, earlier.
Yeah, when he gets up there, and that's when he sees the bed and he has his his flashbacks, time with her and whatever. That is where you can see the light switch going off, to where I've got this moralistic, high integrity Navy SEAL type person. Now he's like, nope, super pissed. Gloves come off. I'm going to go John Wick on people.
Going on a roaring rampage of revenge.
Yeah,
as Sterling Archer would say.
Terms of rampagement. But what I liked about this scene where he goes back to the house was it felt real to me that you're a military guy. You've probably seen people die around you. So when he was in the house the first time, it was the heat of battle, and it didn't really hit him until he came back and they're gone.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Yeah.
Right.
So that was well done.
There was that adrenaline rush, especially because also he was shot and pretty messed up, in the attack on his house. He's also now had, I'm assuming more than 5 days has gone by, because you don't just recover from surgery and go through rehab and then all of a sudden be up and walking around within 5 days, even though the police tape in the crime scene kind of makes you think that it's not been 2 or 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so when he gets that, but now this is his first actual reconnection back to that scene. And it's also different because you're right. You can see, and you're used to people dying around you, and even if they're friends, whatever, you expect that. That's part of the job. It's part of their life. You do not expect to have your wife, your 8-month pregnant wife, assassinated in front of you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that's definitely why there's that huge emotional response that he wouldn't necessarily have if it was, either in combat, or why he didn't have it that first time around.
Yeah, exactly.
He grabs some weapons from inside his water heater, it looked like.
That's right.
And then he goes to stay in a motel. He gets a bunch of his clothes and pees all over them in the tub.
Yeah, I wanted an explanation for this.
And then he poured a bunch of vodka all over him. And the next we see is a neighborhood in DC. And he's pretending to be homeless, so he smells terrible. Do you finally get it, Zach?
No, I didn't get it at the time because I thought he was just a drunk guy, not homeless. I didn't realize he was pretending to be homeless.
Uh-huh.
Way he's not going to smell very well.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretending to be just some random guy who happened to drink too much.
No,
if he was homeless, I feel like he needed bigger hair. But I guess you can't grow hair on command. Not even Navy SEALs can do that.
As soon as he poured the vodka over himself, I was like, oh, I think I know where he's going with this.
Yeah.
Like him just peeing on his clothes. I was like, wait, what is going on here? But it's a good cover. So he goes to like this neighborhood in DC, the home of Vasiliev.
Looked like the Russian embassy.
Or that, actually. I wasn't sure, like, I don't know where the real Russian embassy is anymore, because I know they moved. Well, they moved it like when it was the Soviet to the Russians. I don't actually remember where that one was. Probably right in that it was supposed to be there.
There's no way they filmed it at the real one. Are you kidding?
Yeah, probably not.
No. Yeah, no one's going to have the kind of like security outside their house in DC like that guy did. It had to have been
true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and he sees Vasiliev leaving in a SUV, and he follows them in a tow truck. Where did he get this tow truck? Can you rent a tow truck?
I'm assuming he stole it.
Yeah, his life is like a Grand Theft Auto game.
And being someone who's had their car towed by one of those trucks, I really appreciate the fact that he stole it. It was like my secret revenge.
Yeah, I haven't had one towed here in DC, but I've had one towed in Hawaii, and it's just a pain.
So I do like here, he follows them to the airport, and he does the fake 911 call, which I love it when people do that in movies. But I think Michael B. Jordan was pretending to be someone who's bad at acting, because there's a part where he's like, this guy has a gun. Hurry up. I'm really scared. You guys remember this? It sounds very unconvincing.
I don't remember it being unconvincing.
Lance, how about you? Break the tie. Agree with me.
I thought he definitely toned it down because of if I'm driving along and it's like someone's like all of a sudden waving a gun at me, I'm going to be like, hey, this guy's waving a gun at people. You might want to get here. Whereas he's just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think he flashed a gun at me. Yeah, do something.
Fair.
You didn't sound really scared. That's what I'm getting.
Well, I like because he was even like being the like I don't want to be that guy, and so I was like, he was being calm but not like freaked out about it. Like I think he focused like what he was trying to make them focus on was the swerving at first. Good acting on his part is like because otherwise, if you like play it up too much, then he just wants them momentarily.
Because if you just left it, I'm at Dulles. There's some guys swerving lanes, and if they had just left it at that, like I'm trying to report a drunk guy, I'm like, dude, everybody swerves. You new to DC traffic.
Yeah.
But
so it was like just enough to get him pulled over, but not necessarily enough to like have a full SWAT team come down.
Right, but when he said he's got a gun, and also the fact that they're at the airport.
Yep.
So that's why you see the whole mass response, because now we have a potential drunk guy with a gun, or we've got a potential terrorist incident where some guys, weaving in and out with weapons going towards the airport. Yeah, so the way his thought process worked, calling 911 was great, but I'm still kind of with Zach.
All right.
He could have played it up a little bit better.
Circle back to that.
Sorry, I'm agree 98% of the time.
So this part confused me. So there's an SUV and then the car. Is the SUV supposed to be his bodyguards that he called the police?
No, the SUV, that's his car. That's what the car they were in.
The car that he sets on fire is an SUV?
Wasn't it?
No.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Okay.
Yeah, there were two vehicles. One of them was probably his security detail.
Okay, yeah.
Which I don't know why he would need that much security if he's getting on a plane. Are they all going somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could have been a trail vehicle in case, maybe if that car breaks down or whatever, they've got something else that they can put him in to take him on his way.
Right.
But yeah, no, they stopped the security vehicle.
Oh, okay. But they didn't stop him.
Did
they?
Him. No, because he kept going as he should.
That's right. Okay, that makes more sense then. So they stopped the security so that they wouldn't be around him when
right. Exactly.
John went after him. Okay.
Thank you for clearing up that confusion.
Once the car gets right up to the gate at Dulles, was this actually Dulles? I don't think it was actually Dulles.
It didn't look like it.
No, because Dulles has the two levels, and it's got a very distinctive architecture, and it did not look like Dulles to me.
No.
So once they got up to the drop-off, John rams their car with the tow truck, gets out, and then pours gasoline on the car, and then does the very stylish thing of getting like a Zippo lighter out, lighting it, and then just tossing it onto the car, and boom, fire.
Well, it doesn't explode. It's just the outside of it's covered with fire. So
Yeah.
I was like, dude, aren't you supposed to ask this guy a question? Like, did you forget why you were there? But then he runs over, opens the door, and climbs in.
And very quickly shoots the two security who's in there.
Yeah. But I liked that they had this conversation in a car while the car is on fire.
Yeah.
That is new.
That kind of reminded me, like, in the one scene in the first Taken movie when Liam Neeson's at his friend's house in Paris, and he's trying to get him to answer questions, and he doesn't do it. And then Neeson pulls out the gun, but doesn't shoot his friend. He shoots his friend's wife in the leg.
Oof.
Yeah.
So I actually haven't seen Taken yet, and it'll be one of the ones we cover, but interesting. All right.
Well, the part where he shoots Vasiliev in the leg reminded me of that part, Lance. You're right. And speaking of Vasiliev, did you recognize him, Christian?
No, who is he?
Finally, I recognize an actor and you don't. I should remember this. He was Oleg Penkovsky in The Courier, which is what we recorded a couple weeks ago, though it won't be posted until the end of the year.
Wow, that is interesting. I did not recognize him.
Yeah, I knew he looked familiar. I think he lost some weight since The Courier. His face looked thinner.
Well, anyway, so he gets a name from Vasiliev, Victor Rykov. So, and then he kills Vasiliev, and John exits the burning car, has his hands up, and he gets arrested.
Yeah, I was wondering how he was expecting to get away from the cops, and it turns out he wasn't.
No, yeah.
Like he was counting on it.
And then, so Secretary Clay is at some DC restaurant. I was trying to figure out where this was supposed to be, but I could not. It didn't look like anywhere I knew.
No, it was probably just a set. The outside looked like it could have been in DC, but it went by too fast to figure it out. Yeah, and he sees on the news, Perd Hapley from Parks and Recreation is giving a news report.
Was that really him?
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that. He should have said, and you heard with Perd.
Have you heard about this latest Navy SEAL criminal murder investigation with Perd?
Oh, man. And it's funny, there's people who just sort of get typecast as newscasters. So he's watching the news report and mentions that someone leaked files connecting them to the Russians.
Yeah, and Ritter figures out pretty quickly that it's Greer.
Is he not at the restaurant right now? No. He's at a restaurant in a different part. He's just in his office.
Well, okay, on the news, though, it's still Perd.
Yeah,
I just forget where it is that he's watching it. But you're right.
I messed that up. Yeah, that was me. Ritter was in his office as he's watching his news report. And Ritter says that, we didn't leak it. Why would we want to leak? Why would we leak it? And Ritter also says that now John has a target on his back. He won't be safe even in prison.
Yeah, he's in a prison with a bunch of Russian mobsters, we learn.
Kelly makes the point of that, well, maybe John is, shook a tree that they couldn't shake. So let's see what else falls out.
Yeah, that was a cool line, though I do remember thinking it was funny that Russian mobsters are so patriotic, they'll be happy to help out their government.
I don't know if it's necessarily that. It's more that they'll probably get paid to do it.
They'll probably get paid to do it, and the fact that it's like one of those, we can kill other Russians, but you can't kill Russians.
That's a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and also we can kill Americans, but you can't.
Right.
Greer goes to meet with John in prison, and John is without remorse for what he did.
Well played.
And reasonably so.
Yeah.
But John makes this big speech here where he was like, we fought for what America could be. And I was really confused. I was like, why is this relevant to the story?
Because
what are you talking about? Huh?
It's because he's black. This spoke to me on that level of we fought for an America that didn't care about us.
That's true, and I did think the same thing. I also took it from kind of what they alluded to earlier when Ritter was talking about we're just going to let it drop.
That too, I can see the both parts, but I think the fact that he's being the character's now being played by a black actor made me think about that more, and I'm sure that Michael B. Jordan, when going into this, probably had some input into, if we're going to change it, we have to make it authentic to my experience.
So, absolutely agree. So see, I'm back to being on your side.
Well, the thing about also, Christian, what you were saying is that it makes a little bit more sense than he was like, oh, they wouldn't let me hunt down my guys, and now I'm going to totally change my point of view about being a Navy SEAL pretty much overnight. Though I guess having your family murdered would do that.
Yeah, and I think maybe just because I recently watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where they bring up a lot of that stuff, and also just everything that's going on in the world, and also just thinking about, all right, this is a character who originally a white character. I wanted to see what kind of changes they would make necessarily for him being played by a black actor. I can see that. Yeah,
I was kind of interested in that as well, but because I also looked at it to where because I saw some really stupid comments on social media about this, which I usually try to avoid. But in reality, I don't think that the character's race plays any real significant part to the character. So, I mean, to me, it made no difference that Michael B. Jordan played this character versus William Dafoe, or Liev Schreiber, who's also played the Clark characters. But I think the fact that Michael B. Jordan obviously is a black actor, it can bring in that whole aspect of the speech that he gave to Greer in prison, which I thought was well done.
Yeah.
So while we're on the subject, isn't the actress who plays Greer, wasn't she in No Time to Die?
No.
Is that someone else?
Yes, that's what's.
She also has short hair, which I think may have been why I thought they were the same person.
No, that's also in Captain Marvel. Lashana Lynch. There we go. That's her name.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, while we're on the subject, No Time to Die isn't coming out anytime soon, right?
October.
Because I want to talk about. Do you remember talking about how it looked like James Bond was going to be replaced by her, and then people got mad?
Get me started.
Wait. Okay, wait. I have more to say. You'll like this. And then it turned out that in the universe, James Bond retired, and she was just the new 007.
Which anyone with a brain could have figured out.
Right, but I still think it's outrageous because every sports league in the country retires jersey numbers. And you're telling me they can't do that for James Bond? How many times does he save the world? Hang on, I'm going to blow my soapbox land. He saved the world. They can't retire his jersey. They can't put a tuxedo on the wall that says 007. It's not like they're going to run out of numbers.
Oh, actually, they will because they only get 9.
What? You could be 0010?
No, actually, you can. In the novels, there is a 0011.
The disrespect is outrageous. No one can replace James Bond.
Yeah, but if you remember, though, in the movie in Thunderball, when they brought in all the double O's, there were only 9 of them.
That is true.
I just got to out James Bond. Okay, we can get back to With Our Remorse now.
But one more thing on this. You don't think every other 00 has also just saved the world a bunch of times? Like, this is probably, like, there's all these other... I think so. That's my opinion.
Oh my gosh, the world is really under threat then if it needs at least 10 people.
We just don't know about it. But okay, go on to this movie. Where were we? So Greer's there at the prison meeting with John, and John says he wants to get message to Secretary Clay. And he's like, because I know, she's like, well, okay, what do you know? Well, I'm not going to tell you because that's my bargaining chip, and I'm only going to tell you once you get me out of here because there's a Russian mob here, and I'm going to not survive.
Which is the key reason why he wanted to go too. Because if he was just like regular old penitentiary, they're going to be like, well, you're going to be there for a while. But because the Russian mob's there, he's probably not.
Yeah.
And it shows the people that he wants to get him out, they have to act quickly.
Yeah.
They can't take their sweet time because he's going to die if they do.
So in his cell, John is visited by a guard who sees him through the peephole and says, you're getting taken on a trip. Can you turn around? Arms on the wall. And he's like, no, I'm not going if you don't tell me where I'm going. Wraps a towel around his hand, takes his shirt off to show his very fit physique.
I mean, he looks like he did in Creed.
Or in Black Panther. Like, he's just I'm very impressed. He's very fit.
Let's admire him some more.
So yeah, he definitely works out. He probably does CrossFit.
Yeah. He takes off his shirt, and I thought he was like, all right, are you soaking the shirt for something? But no, he's actually just clogging the sink. So that it floods the whole place. He throws some water on the floor to help the process. So the guards come in.
I thought that was cool that the guards were going to slip on the water.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. I was very impressed by just this thinking. And so John easily dispatches 3 or 4 of them.
I counted 4. But then I was like, okay, you've got your 4 guards and you got a hostage. What's the plan now? What's your next move?
Well, to get him out of there.
He's like, I'm just going to wait here until you get me out, basically.
Pretty much. And it's not very long after. I was wondering, when they're coming in to get him, it's like, all right, are these dirty cops or dirty paid off prison guards? What's going on here?
Right.
So then the U.S. Marshal comes up to the door, slides a phone in the hole, and it's Greer on the phone. He says, we're getting you out. You can trust this U.S. Marshal. I was like, okay. So now he knows where he's going. Because, if a guard just comes up to him and says, you're going on a trip, he doesn't know, are they people I want to go with? Are they, dirty cop paid off or dirty guard paid off by the Russian mob? What's the deal?
Yeah, totally. And I think everyone expected when the guard said you're going somewhere that he was going to be killed. Now, far be it from me to be against violence in a movie. Everyone knows I love it. But the thing is, this whole part was totally unnecessary because he goes going into the hands of the military into prison and then back into the hands of the military again. So the whole thing could have been skipped with a scene that says we're transferring you to Greer's custody or something.
No, not so much. There were obviously civil authorities involved, and he's in a normal non-military prison. At that point, while he's still technically military, I don't think they ever said that he was out. I think back in that scene in the beginning with they're at the friend's house or whatever, he's talking about getting out and doing the job. So he's still technically in.
Right.
No, they're not going to turn him over to her for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
If this movie had more to do, I think they probably could have skipped that, but since they had to pad a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So he gets brought to a warehouse, and Greer is there, and there's a shipping container office, which I appreciated. And it had Clay, CIA Director Sarah Dillard. So this is where we see actually the CIA Director, and Ritter's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to know what he learned. So he doesn't even say anything, just the name, Victor Rykov, which I guess he doesn't really know who Victor Rykov is. He just has the name.
Right.
But once he says that name, everyone just sort of goes like, wait, what?
Yeah, how and why do you know this? Yeah, the other thing that I had to think about for a little bit was, why I could see the CIA director being there. I can see, obviously, Ritter being there for sure.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to try to figure out why the Secretary of Defense would be there.
Yeah, that's a good. I didn't even really think of it in the moment, but yeah.
But the more I thought about it, it could have been the fact that this whole thing initially was a SEAL operation. Granted, it was in conjunction with CIA, and the fact that SEALs had been killed. I can see it maybe having SecDef attention.
Yeah,
but again, movie.
All right. Anyway, so we find out that Victor Rykov's supposed to be dead, and that he was actually educated here in the U.S. And had a plan to take out the West. He even had like a bunch of men trained to do it, but they initiated an op to prevent him. And they do this. I like this. So like, just to even be clear that, okay, this is the person we're talking about. Ritter has one of the analysts in the room pull up a bunch of put a digital line up basically, and have his photo with a number of other photos so that John can identify him.
Yeah, it's a good thing you took his mask off.
Right.
This whole scene reminded me of something out of a Modern Warfare Call of Duty game, which isn't really a criticism per se. Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So once John identifies him, he says like, "I want to be on the team that takes him out." Greer's like, "No, with respect, he's not fit for duty."
Which, of course, he's totally not.
No, you're right. No, he's not.
No. And actually, I really appreciated her saying that because they've obviously developed that there is a brother sister relationship between the two of them. They obviously serve on the same SEAL team. That's his, commanding officer, this, and this. But when the fact that, especially when knowing all that he has gone through, and she has that unique perspective of him, for her to be like, no, he's not even remotely fit for this. Instead of the usual buddy spy thing, let's go kick their ass together.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't want him on my team because at this point he is a liability.
Goddamn liability. Also, it's like he's a cop and he's too close to the case.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then the secretary is like, I want him on the team. And he's like, gross.
Well, no, but before he even says that, you've got that one, the whole line of, in order to do what we need to do, obviously I've more than proven I'm willing to go that extra step. And it was almost like his version of, you need me on that wall. You need me on this team.
Yes.
Yeah,
which,
nobody
of course,
like
now
me.
I'm only hearing Jack Nicholson impressions. We go to a hangar which has like a private jet inside of it. Or actually, it doesn't look, it looked like a private jet, but now that once we see the inside, it actually looks like a passenger jet. Like just a smaller passenger jet.
Yeah, on the smaller side of things. And they're going to jump out of it, which was cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before in a movie.
And John even calls out, like, I've never jumped out of like a commercial jet before.
Right. It's like, well, this is new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently it's like modified so like the cargo section will drop and they can exit that way.
Which leave it to the CIA to have an airplane like that.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
And so their cover is they're just a commercial flight that's going, over the drop zone, and Ritter will meet them there somehow. Somehow he'll get there.
Yeah, which should have been a warning sign, but it wasn't. Classic Ritter. So they have a conversation between Greer and John, where he talks about having survivor's guilt, which makes sense.
And he's also mad that Greer didn't think he was fit for the field, which, like you said, he isn't.
Right. And then finally he says, this is about justice, it's not about revenge. So I was like, maybe this isn't a revenge movie after all.
No, it's a total lie. It was absolutely about revenge.
Yeah.
It just so happened to be justice played, a minor part to it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're about to halo jump into Russian airspace, which, me being me, made me think about, well, actually the two movies, Fallout, where they did an excellent halo jump. I was like, ooh, is Michael B. Jordan going to halo jump? And also, the first time I heard about a halo jump was in Tomorrow Never Dies, where it wasn't actually Pierce Brosnan who did it, but it was still a cool looking shot.
Now, this movie doesn't have the budget for an actual jump.
Right as they're about to jump, the Russian Air Force catches them, and they fire a missile at the engine.
And it's not like the Russians don't have a history of doing that.
Oh, I mean, the U.S. isn't exactly one to talk about that, if I recall correctly.
We're not going to talk about that, Zach.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the engine goes out, and I think it's John who goes up to the pilots and says what's the plan? He's like, well, we're going for a swim. Everyone brace for impact. And I was impressed. And I don't know if this is physics wise is how it would actually work, but they managed to get the plane down from from a halo jump height to the water. Everyone pretty much survives that. Actually, do the pilots survive? I don't know. Now that I think about it,
I sure don't remember the pilots coming with them.
Yeah, I just thought about that. And I was like, oh wait, no, I think the pilots are dead, but everyone else survives.
They didn't take that extra part in the Sullenberger School of Water Landings.
I will say it was interesting that this scene was filmed with the camera inside the plane the whole time. On the one hand, you could say it was it's John's perspective, and he's not going to see the outside. And I don't want to make fun of this movie being made on the cheap, but it also felt like it was made on.
We see something on the outside, though. We see some CG,
Yeah, that was cool. You see the Russian warplane on the outside.
Well, no, I mean, even we see the plane crashing.
Yeah.
From the outside perspective, too.
I might have been writing when that happened. This movie was made on the cheap. Why don't they show us the plane crashing while the plane crashes?
Everyone else is trying to get to the exits, and the plane's filling up with water, but of course John's thinking just about the mission. And he's like, we gotta go get the gears. Without the gear, there's no mission. Keeps talking about a Zodiac. What is a Zodiac?
Oh, isn't it a boat, Lance?
I was wondering about it. Is that the boat? Okay.
Yeah. Which it's good that he got it, because were they going to swim home?
Yeah, it's not.
Well, their seats also double as flotation devices.
But that's still a pretty hefty, long swim, and I'm guessing maybe the Barrett Sea or something along those lines.
Brr. It made the Captain Kirk swim in the voyage home look short by comparison.
Right.
Anyway, so he goes down. The plane is tumbling over because it's breaking in half. And
that was cool. It looks cool.
Grabs the gear and he's trying to get to the surface, and he almost gets stuck under some parts, but makes it to the surface with the help of his team who come and get him. Yeah,
and they all get away on the boat.
Yeah. So we find out this is Murmansk in Russia. Goes to a safe house, and John is thinking about how, all right, are we sure this isn't a setup by Ritter? He's the only one who wasn't there.
Which we know from previous Ritter experiences wouldn't be the first time, or actually it would be the first time that he would have sold out.
Yeah, a team of SEALs, yeah.
But not the last.
I guess not. Yeah. Was Ritter just in another room there? I wasn't sure where he was supposed to be.
I think he was in a different building.
Okay.
I'm waiting for you.
So, but he's in a different building, and there's a Russian newscast saying that, this was a CIA spy plane. And then the team comes into there, guns drawn. There's a couple of other people there too.
Yeah, I assume they're Ritter's henchmen.
But John, threatens Ritter, I think shoots it past his head a few times. He gets an answer from Ritter. he doesn't believe him. Rightfully
Chokes him
so.
out a little bit.
So they head to a location across the street from where Rykov is staying. John gets Rykov in his crosshairs and is like, looks like he might shoot. And Greer even just looks over and is like, I'm just looking. So the team goes to infiltrate the Rykov's apartment. And at one point, John locks the door and leaves everyone else behind.
Yeah, he goes rogue, just like we were all expecting that he would.
And so he opens a door and he sees a dead body and hears Rykov behind him. And Rykov saying that he's actually CIA and that they wanted him there. And you see that Rykov has a bomb vest on.
Yeah, with a dead man switch. And he has this whole speech about, we're not so different, you and I. We're pawns. And this is why I said in the beginning of the podcast that the opening mission should have been an assassination mission.
Oh.
That way you have the duality. Rykov kills for what he believes in. John kills for what he believes in.
Maybe.
Not every movie needs this gray area where the only difference between the protagonist and the antagonist is that we like the protagonist better. Obviously, Tom Clancy isn't really big on these moral gray areas. It just would have been nice.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I think there's enough mirror parts that we don't need them to be complete mirrors of each other necessarily.
Mm-hmm. We get the idea. I also think it's interesting that Rykov doesn't have a Russian accent.
Well, they mentioned, and this is maybe because maybe they tried having him with a Russian accent, he couldn't pull it off. But they mentioned in the briefing that he was raised in the U.S.
Oh, he's a Russian American. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why he has an American accent. But yeah, so John sees the bomb, tries to convince him not to blow it, but Rykov blows it. Before he does, he says that those behind us in Washington are not the only true patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow John and his whole team survive the blast.
Right.
But they start getting picked off by a sniper. And John does this cool move where he picks up a piece of a mirror to try to find out where the sniper is.
Yeah, like Enemy at the Gates. Great
movie. Exactly. You beat me to it by 2 seconds.
We find out there's also a second sniper. They try to get to the SEAL who was hit.
Mm-hmm.
And they trying to move, but the sniper's covering the exit. And then some Russian cops arrive, and the sniper takes out the Russian cops. And that's when John realizes that it's because it makes it look like the Americans shot the cops.
Right.
And he realizes that it's all a setup. Now that they have dead Russians on American soil, and they'll have dead Americans on Russian soil. And Ritter's they're trying to start a war.
Just like Modern Warfare 2.
Indeed.
So they could try to find a new exit. They blow a hole through a wall. Greer gets to the sniper and takes him out hand to hand.
It was pretty sweet. So I thought the whole rest of the movie was going to be them in this building.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
Like it was going to be the Raid or Dread or something like that.
But I think I wish they'd done.
I mean, there was a very extended sequence, and which it was really good. Yeah.
The other thing I wish they had done was they never really said who the snipers were.
That's true. Yeah.
They were conspirators. Yeah.
Yeah. Get to the lobby finally, and the guy who got hit, I think his code name was Dallas.
Yeah, this was a funny conversation. You're like, what do you want to tell your kid? He's like, tell him.
Well, he says, tell him I love them. And then he's like, tell them, and then just dies.
It's such a cliche. I thought it was hilarious. I mean, you guys aren't as stone-hearted as I am.
Anyway, so John has a plan. He's going to go to the roof and clear a path for them. And they're like, no, we can't leave you behind. You can't leave anyone behind, because then they'll still have what they get what they want. They'll have, dead Americans on Russian soil. But I'm not a soldier. I'm a felon, and I have deniability, basically.
Sure. Whatever you got to tell yourself. I do like how this scene was the cliche of, you go and I'll hold them off. If he wasn't a main character, he would have been absolutely dead.
Yeah, so he gets onto the roof, throws a grenade at one of the police cars and blows it up, starts shooting. As the team gets away.
This really felt like a video game, this part.
So Russian soldiers catch up on him on the roof, jumps through a skylight, and then he somehow finds time to disguise himself as a Russian soldier, including a mask, like a gas mask.
Mm-hmm. He's able to get away stealing an ambulance in the process.
And drives all the way to the rendezvous point at the warehouse. And Greer's there. She says the others went ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That made me think, if you're driving a stolen ambulance to your safe house. Well, I know you can abandon it pretty quickly, but still.
Well, as it turned out, it wasn't to a safe house; it was to a boat, and then they just used the boat to get away.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I do like here. He says Rykov was me on the other side, just in case you didn't get it. He's gonna explain it.
So Greer, Ritter, and John are all talking on the boat. And they said this started in D.C. Once John gets back, he'd be thrown back into jail. And so Ritter actually says, all right, well, there's a duffel bag of cash below deck. We'll just say that John Kelly died in Murmansk.
Well, of course, John Kelly dying in Murmansk was the whole thing they were trying to avoid in the first place. But whatever.
Well, no, but I can see where he's getting at. It's like, just because there's no body, that Greer and Ritter can go back and be like, well, he died either on the way out. Somehow he died. We just don't have the body for him.
Yeah.
We dumped him over, gave him a burial at sea or whatever.
Okay. So it turns out Ritter's nice after all. We were all so wrong about him.
Is he though?
He's nice when it serves his own interests.
You stole my line.
Well, Zach stole mine, the enemy of the gates line, so now you can steal his.
It's a mutual stealing.
Yeah. Anyway, so here's where Secretary Clay is at a restaurant in D.C.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah. And so he's watching a newscast, so that's why I conflated the two scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to the bathroom, and John sneaks up in the bathroom, and John tells him what the deal was, that they weren't supposed to survive. And Clay tries to pin it on director Dillard.
Yeah, well, I almost believed it for a second there, because I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my goodness.
And then John talks about... Actually, I had to rewind this of time, because I thought that Clay mentions the explosive vest. And I was like, and then John was going to be like, but I never said anything about an explosive vest. But it was the other way around. It was kind of that, but variation, where John mentions the explosive vest, and Secretary Clay has zero reaction to it. And then he mentions that, yes, but Greer never mentioned the explosive vest in your report, so you shouldn't have known anything about it. So it's almost that thing, but a variation of it, but I liked it, because I always appreciate that in a movie. Even though it's kind of a cliche, I like it.
It was interesting, because he says, I told you about that, and you didn't seem surprised. And I was like... You didn't seem surprised. Is that really the kind of evidence that you would sentence a man to die in a river over?
Well, if you don't really care about evidence but your own satisfaction, yeah.
I guess he turned out to be correct, but still.
Yeah, so they have a very brief scuffle, and then John gets him in like a sleeper hold, knocks him out.
Uh-huh.
And then puts Clay in a car and makes him tell him, why. And why is this happening? Makes some vague threat to Clay's kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clay has this whole big speech about who won World War II. It was the economists.
Well, it was the industrialists, I feel, is what he was going for. It's like the military-industrial complex thing all over again. America needs an enemy to spend money on, which I always thought was silly, because we don't need the Soviet Union to spend money on the defense budget. I mean, give me a break.
It was an interesting point that he made, that basically it's like, big country means big enemies, and the biggest enemy there ever was Soviet Union. But now, we're not focused. We're so focused on fighting each other that we don't come together as a country. It's basically the Watchmen argument. It's Ozymandias' plan from the end of Watchmen.
He was trying to prevent a nuclear war, and this guy just wants to make money. It's a little bit different.
Does he want to make money? I don't think it necessarily wants to make money, but he just wants to put himself in that mindset of, we need a big enemy to bring us together. I think that's what his plan was.
Yeah, I'm with Christian on that one. It's like, I don't think monetary gain was his thing, but it was more of...
I mean, if it was, we probably would have heard more about, him having holdings in military, contractors and something like that.
Right. But I mean, also with him being the Secretary of Defense, that gives him more budget, that gives him more power, that gives him more influence.
Money budget-wise, but not necessarily his personal, money.
Right. But it would definitely increase his level of influence probably within... he's already sacked out, so he's already up there to begin with.
Yeah.
Like the man said, poor man wants to be rich, rich man wants to be king, king won't be satisfied until he rules everything. Though I do think it's funny that a bunch of people who want to start a war with the Soviet Union are the bad guys in this movie, considering Tom Clancy was such a cold warrior.
I guess we'll talk about this more when we get into how the book was different from the movie. But I think it's sort of trying to get that Cold War feeling with Russian bad guys still, but placing it into a modern context.
Yeah, old Tom would have been proud to have a story where Russians are the bad guys yet again.
John hears all this and decides, all right, I'm going to drive you off a bridge. which I was trying to figure out because I don't think this part was filmed in DC because like that looks like no bridge that I can think of in DC with those kind of railings.
Yeah, definitely not.
I thought it looked vaguely like the Georgetown Bridge. But you are right that the railings are different.
The railings are different. Like I think maybe it was supposed to be there, but it did not look like it. So DC, I don't think there's any bridge here where there are railings where you could just drive through them like that.
I would be scared.
But so he does as they're going down into the water. He's like telling him, my wife's name was Pam. You're gonna say it before you die. And Clay is shouting Pam's name, using up all his oxygen as he does so, and then drowns.
Yeah, he drowns in like 10 seconds.
And John is very calmly like holding his breath.
I thought it would have been kind of cool if Secretary was like, no. If he was like, screw you, like, I don't know. I just hate how bad guys are like wimps in movies.
Oh, no death, dignity in death kind of thing.
Yeah, but whatever.
Anyway, and as it looks like he's passing out, John is having a dream about his wife and is this heaven?
Yeah, there's a white light and a rainbow, which I was like, rainbow, very funny, very funny. I didn't think they were actually going to do it later.
I wondered when I first I was like, okay, here we go.
No, that was terrible.
Okay. Anyway, so we next go to a joint funeral for John and Pam, seemingly.
Yes. Like Tom Sawyer, he got to attend his own funeral.
Oh, yeah. That's the total deal, 21 gun salute. Was this supposed to be Arlington Cemetery? Probably.
Yeah, I would say so. And Greer gets the flag, and I was like, they didn't have any other family?
Doesn't seem like I guess the other guy, like the guy who was there, like they were talking to, I don't think he was a relative. I think he was just a friend. Like who was in the very beginning. Yeah, I think that was probably just his friend. So doesn't seem like they had any other family.
Yeah, also the friend is like, you think combat is bad? Just imagine having a kid.
Oh, I forgot about that line.
He probably was like a military buddy or something.
Yeah.
Did how John says, I thought there'd be more people at my funeral.
Yeah. We also get a little flashback of the underwater car. John was rescued by a scuba diver. And Ritter, apparently he had a waterproof recording device.
Sure, why not? He's a Navy SEAL.
And had recorded everything Clay said. And Ritter plays that to one of his higher-ups who we don't actually see their face. It wasn't the director, though, so someone. And it says, I need a favor. And so we go to Union Station, D.C., which looked like it was actually Union Station.
It absolutely was, yes. Yeah. As someone who spent a lot of time there, it was the fancy main entrance, which if you're getting there on the Metro, which almost everybody does, you're not going to see it.
No. Greer gives John his new legend and says that your buddy Ritter, got this for you. And his new name, John Clark.
Hey, it all comes full circle.
And he says, what are you going to do now? I'll do what I'm best at, disappearing.
Yes, except he doesn't disappear, as it turns out.
Well, he does for a year. Actually, I was wondering, Zach, if you were going to miss this after-credits scene.
They sort of took their sweet time, but I suspected that there was going to be one.
I had a feeling there would be, but I'm just remembering back to, I think it was The Spy Who Dumped Me, where there's an after-credits scene that's all maybe 2 seconds after the credits start, and you missed it entirely. So I was like, this not a lot of spy movies, unless they're Marvel movies or something like that. They don't always have after credit scenes. So I was wondering if you were going to pay attention for one.
Yeah, but movies post 2015 seem to love having them.
True.
Anyway, you got to stick around.
We get our nice after credit scene. I liked it. Right at the Washington Monument, and it's 1 year later. Ritter is now. Well, John calls him director, but I'm wondering if it's his actually director of the CIA, or is deputy director of operations like he was in Clear and Present Danger.
Probably DDO.
Would you still call him director though?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, interesting. I don't know what the protocol is, so I was just kind of curious. And John said he's been thinking about what happened, how it could happen again. Very Nick Fury. I'm putting the team together.
Okay, so I love my Rainbow Six games, and I'm really excited for Rainbow Six series. That was undermined slightly. I didn't like that he was like, we want people from the U.S., Britain, and NATO countries. Because I was like, come on, it's supposed to be international, not just NATO.
If I remember correctly, didn't they have a Russian?
Yeah.
Russian Federation as part of it too?
And some South American people.
Yeah.
I think some Saudis too. Whatever.
That was where they actually supposedly was getting the name Rainbow from. It was a Rainbow Coalition.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
Not from some near-death experience vision.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the other thing I don't like, that it was stupid, and that's where he came up with the name. Because you saw a rainbow.
I don't know. I liked it because I wasn't expecting an after credit scene. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fast forward just in case. And
Mhm.
I found it, and it felt like Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man 1.
Totally.
But I liked how all of a sudden he was gone for a year, whatever, hasn't had contact with anybody, but all of a sudden he shows back up at DC at night, talks to Ritter,
looking very cool in all black
Yeah, it's
and
like-
with glasses on. Yeah,
and he's telling him, "Hey, I'm putting a team together."
uh-huh.
Like,
And I want to present it to president.
yeah,
And I'm
who
gonna
are
run
you
it.
to tell anybody that you're going to do anything.
Right.
Uh-huh.
But I
Yeah, he's
also
got his
think-
confidence.
But I also think, and Zach and I were talking about this earlier. I think they missed a huge opportunity here.
Oh,
Because man, this is supposed to be like a backstory of
Uh-huh.
everything, and there is a significant relationship between Jack Ryan and
yeah.
Clark.
Okay. Yeah.
That when he disappeared or whatever, been like, this is your new identity, so on and so forth, and be like, well, where are you going to go? He's like, well, I don't really know. And he's like, have you ever been to Colombia? And that would explain why he was in Colombia for all those years for
that makes
clear and
sense.
present
Yeah.
danger. But no.
I was wondering if there would be any sort of tie-in, like other than obviously having Pam Grier be the niece of Jim Grier. Not Pam Grier. What was her name? Karen Grier.
Karen.
Pam Grier is the actress from blaxploitation movies.
Yeah, these Amazon Jack Ryan feel like reboots. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're not acknowledging the Harrison Ford era.
Yeah, obviously not. But I'm just saying, I'm wondering if there would be ties between the two of those, between the John Krasinski, Jack Ryan series, and this one.
And that's kind of what I was hoping for, because in season 2 of
He goes to Venezuela.
Yeah, it has very clear and present danger-esque
vibes,
theme to it. And there was a character that seemed like he could have been
right, and I think
Clark.
it probably would have been if they weren't making this movie.
Yeah,
because they're made by the same studio, like Skydance and Paramount. I'm hoping that they can tie in together, because I think that would be fun, and to see Michael B. Jordan play off against John Krasinski, I think would be pretty cool.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
Watch the Jesus out of that.
Yeah. All right, so that was the movie. So let's get into our spy fact versus spy fiction. I think Zach, you have a few things.
Yeah, I have a few things that occurred to me while I was watching. The first is, are there any female Navy SEALs? According to Distractify.com, until January 2016, women weren't allowed to serve in combat roles at all.
Yeah.
However, 18 months later, 2 women made history when they enlisted as the first female candidates trying to join the SEALs.
Right, I remember that.
One was trained to be a SEAL. The other one was a SWCC, or Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman. So I guess someone who drives the Zodiac.
Okay.
Neither of them made it, though. And then another woman in 2018 was able to reach the end of the SEAL Officer Assessment and Selection course. So I guess she wanted to be an officer. Although she passed the course, she wasn't selected to be a SEAL. However, there are 2 women Army Rangers.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the movie had been about Army Rangers instead, that could have worked, but whatever.
Special Forces is Special Forces. So, I mean, I could see, obviously we do have females who are now Rangers and so on and so forth, that, in a fictional world, I don't see why there wouldn't be a female SEAL now at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just wondering about that. So next is, what about leaking the identity of real-life Navy SEALs? And then I found on May 14th, 2021, this is like breaking news.
Wow, okay.
This week, American Military News reported a Green Beret named Peter Raphael Dzabinski Devins, 48, of Gainesville, Virginia, admitted to divulging military secrets to Russia for 14 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
One of the things he did was he provided the identity of his special forces unit to Russia so that Russia could recruit them as spies, according to Assistant Attorney General John C. Demers. You heard about that story, Lance?
Yeah, that actually, well, at least in my story, it's a little old by now. But yeah, that was shocking. That was rather devastating.
Wow, that is crazy.
And then finally, I was thinking about Dirty SEALs, like the part where they talked about how the SEALs were involved with crime. In April 2017, according to Newsweek, CBS Evening News reported that Navy SEALs are dealing with a, quote, staggering drug problem that resulted in a safety stand down and a stern warning because SEALs had tested positive for marijuana, cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, and methamphetamines. They were able to avoid detection because they were often working overseas and missed their mandatory drug trainings and drug tests on base.
Interesting.
I think the difference there is, I think what they were trying to allude to in the movie was that the SEALs were actually part of the drug trade themselves.
Oh.
Whereas this is, they were definitely more of the, put it in IT terms, the end user.
Well, I didn't find anything about SEALs working in the drug trade, but I guess I could have looked harder than 5 minutes on Google.
All right, so I know that this is probably a vast difference, but briefly, what are some of the big differences from the book and the movie?
Well, it's kind of hard to begin because the movie, with the exception of a few key plot points, which they roughly translated, the book is completely different.
Okay.
But at the same time, it kind of had to be, because the book actually is supposed to take place in the early 70s. Where John Kelly, he was a Navy SEAL. He comes home. Lives in Baltimore.
Okay.
And he does lose his pregnant wife, but her name was Patricia, and she was killed in a car accident.
Oh.
He does eventually start a relationship with a hitchhiker. Her name was Pamela.
Oh.
And as it turns out, that she was kind of a runaway. She was being used by some of the gangs in Baltimore as both a prostitute and a drug mule. And so she was on, addicted to various drugs. Well, they start up a relationship.
Okay.
And John, he knows a couple people, so he basically puts her through rehab. Weeks go by, everything's fine. They've got a great relationship. Well, they're driving to one of her rehab appointments when one of her old pimps in Baltimore sees her in the car. And so there's this car chase. And this is actually where John gets shot with the shotgun.
Okay.
Basically left for dead. Pam is captured. At this point, she's not pregnant. This was the other wife that was pregnant. But she's captured, and she is brutally tortured. She's gang raped. And then they kill her. So that was Clark. Well, he's not Clark yet still. Kelly recovers, but then he goes on like a John Wick vendetta against the various drug gangs in Baltimore.
Okay.
Very ruthlessly. In fact, one of the ways that he kills one of Pam's former pimps to get information about his higher up, he throws him in a decompression chamber.
Oh.
Very similar to License to Kill, as Zach pointed out, and does the same thing. Leaves him to slowly die in there. It's very. The book is very violent, and it's very brutal in its description of it.
Sounds very different from other Tom Clancy books too.
It is. But while this is going on, there's another subsect to it, where in the movie they went to go rescue this CIA operative or whoever had been captured. In the book, keep in mind this Vietnam is still going on. There's an Air Force pilot, a colonel, that gets shot down and captured. But this colonel has significance because he was working with then Strategic Air Command, which is now Stratcom. And so he knows all these different, nuclear operation plans, strategic plans, and so on and so forth. And so the Soviets send a KGB guy to interrogate him, but the CIA and the DoD are trying to put together a team to go extract this guy, which they find Clark, bring him back on the team, and so he goes in. Well, that team is also compromised by a mole within you, because there's always got to be a mole.
Of course.
But they eventually managed to get the guy out, and so on and so forth. Then later on, Clark comes back and he resumes his anti-drug campaign his way in Baltimore. But he is eventually discovered, and they figure out who he is. And you'll never guess who the officer they send that is investigating all these murders, who arrests him. And he
Jack Ryan.
No.
Ritter?
But you're close.
King Chavez.
No, it's Emmett Ryan, who is Jack Ryan's dad.
Oh.
Because remember, Ryan's dad was a police officer.
Right. Okay.
So he eventually tracks down Kelly on his boat. And then, Kelly, admits to everything. This is what I did. This is why I did it. But he's like, I got like one more thing I need to do. Can you give me just one more hour, and then I will turn myself into you? And Emmett Ryan being like, granted, you did murder people, but they were all really bad, and I get why. He gives them the hour. And during that hour, he basically fakes his own death.
Oh, okay.
And
John Clark does?
Yeah.
Or John Kelly.
Does.
Yeah.
And he goes on this boat, he capsizes it, and makes him think that he's dead. However, that is when Admiral Greer and
I was wondering when he'd come into it. Okay.
Yeah, recruit him into the CIA as John Clark. And where Clark knows Greer from is the operation that was going to go down to rescue
the pilot.
The pilot, both Greer and Ritter were in charge of it. Greer being the intel guy on it, and Ritter being the operations guy.
Okay, all right.
I see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that is a very different story, but I can see how there's like elements of it that are the same.
Right.
Like, definitely, it's in the same way that like the new Jack Ryan TV shows are not a direct adaptation of any of the books, but they have a lot of the essence and spirit of some of them.
Yeah, you can definitely see, especially like I said in that second season, you can see the influence that Clear and Present Danger has.
I think I have like 2 or 3 episodes of that left. I need to finish it, but yeah. All right, shall we get into our favorite quotes then?
Yeah. Does anyone want to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I liked it was in the very beginning where it's Ritter talking, or I forget what John says. And then Ritter says, "You're a bit of a comedian, is that it?" And one of those other people says, "No, he's just a smartass." No, wait, that's not right. I'm the smartass. He's more of a badass.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked, on a different note, as John says, "I'll show them what a pawn can do to a king."
Yeah, and then he doesn't, which I appreciated.
And then he realizes that, I wasn't, he wasn't a king. He was just another me.
Yeah, but he's a little overconfident, so it worked.
Yeah. I liked, and I also liked, that you messed up when they send a motorcade, and then U.S. Marshal says, "Buddy, they're gonna write songs about all the shit you messed up."
Yeah, I like that one because A, he calls him Buddy, and B, it's like writing songs about him. That's such an anachronism.
It's very Klingon.
Yeah, that too. I guess if they had tried to make it modern, he could have been like, "Buddy, they're gonna make TikTok videos about all the stuff you messed up."
All right, Lance, do you want to go next?
Actually, I have 2.
Okay.
Okay.
One of them, because I have 2 kids myself, I thought was particularly funny when Kelly and Pam go back to the house after their party at their friend's house, and he looks at Pam and he's like, "So how's my girl?" And she's like, "Pregnant. You should try it." And he's like, "Well, actually, I was talking to the other girl." I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But my other one was right after. I think they have the brief at the. I'm assuming was CIA area, or maybe even at the Pentagon, where what was it? What did she say exactly? Oh, where Karen Greer looks at Ritter and he's like, how come both the times in my life when my world has gone to complete shit, you're standing in the middle of it? And he's just like, yeah, I'm lucky like that, I guess.
Nice. There's a lot of clever banter between them. I have one. Speaking of that, I think it might almost have been from that same scene when Greer says, "These are your toe tags." I thought that was kind of a cool line. And then right before the plane gets attacked by the missile, the 2 effectively nameless Navy SEALs, they do have names, but we never get to know them that well, have an exchange where one of them says, "What did you dream about?" And the other one says, "You."
Right.
Which felt like the kind of thing that soldiers would say to each other. It felt very real, so I like that. All right, now it's time for our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis. 1 being the Avengers with Uma Thurman, still the worst movie that we have covered so far, and 10 being even better than Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. How would we rate without remorse? I can go first.
Sure.
Okay, I thought this movie was okay. I actually found the action to go on a little too long. It was a little bit boring. I guess all the actors did a good job, but there wasn't too much to grab me here. It felt like a streaming service movie. So I will give it a 5 out of 10 martinis.
Wow. All right, Lance, do you want to go next?
Sure. Again, as I've had to do with a lot of the other Clancy movies that we've talked about, completely disassociating myself from the book. I was definitely entertained by it. I thought, the acting, like Zach pointed out, was done very well. Some of the plot points I definitely appreciated. I will agree with Zach, so write this down like twice in the same podcast. I'm agreeing with Zach on something. That the action at the end maybe was a bit gregarious. But, overall, and again, I thought they missed a huge chance to try to tie it in with the Jack Ryan series, which I really would have loved to have seen. So all that being said, I'm debating between 6.5 and 7 martinis. I'll go with 7 since Zach rated it so low.
All right. I don't know, because I'm not always into revenge stories, although I will say, like, since getting a dog, the John Wick series hits a little bit closer.
Well, as revenge movies go, those are like the top tier.
Yeah, so I do love those, but other times revenge stories don't always get me. But this, I will say, I was invested in his story, and I thought it was well done. I like the action. Like there were yes, I guess one thing once they get into that building and it keeps going, I was like Zach, I was like, oh, is this just gonna be the rest of the movie? I'm just getting out of there. So did run a little bit long there to me, but for the most part, I enjoyed the action. And I think I wasn't necessarily disappointed that there wasn't a Jack Ryan tie-in because I didn't expect there to be one just yet. But the way this movie is set up, it makes me hopeful for one. And so I'm going to give it a 6. I'm going to be right in the middle of you guys. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like the top tier for me.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's fine. The Rainbow Six setup was exciting, but I'm going to save my excitement until it actually happens.
Fair.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Lance. We will be seeing you later this year for Clear and Present Danger.
Yeah, thanks for definitely having me. These are always so much fun to do, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
But you want to know a real quick trivia question?
Sure.
Especially we keep bringing up a certain movie. When the book came out, when it was originally going to be a movie, do you know who the actor that they initially offered the role of John Clark to?
Keanu Reeves.
I
did read
turned
that.
it down.
Wait,
that would have been interesting.
Wait, the Without Remorse movie?
Yeah.
No,
not in the 90s?
Yeah,
right?
They've been trying to make this into a movie for literally decades. Like even right after the book came out. And one of the first person that they offered the role to was Keanu Reeves.
I can see that.
That would what year would that have been?
It would have been around the era of like Speed. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Let's see. 1995. When did Speed come out? That was like around that 94, maybe? Or 93?
1994 was Speed.
Yeah. Okay, so it would have been right after Speed. So
yeah. And apparently
I guess as a young John Clark, I could see it. It'd be interesting.
And apparently also in a different version, because this movie's been written and rewritten several different times.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Lawrence Fishburne and Gary Sinise were also
interesting.
Approach to do it.
All right.
But that never even made it to
fun, interesting. It's always interesting to hear some of these things, yeah.
And guess who else was apparently I guess they looked to remake it back in 2012.
Oh.
And they talked to Tom Hardy about doing it.
Oh, Tom Hardy.
Interesting. But 2012, was that before or after This Means War? His spy movie.
I'm going to go with
romance.
But if they'd gotten Tom Hardy, he would have to have been like this the whole...
Yeah, that had to have a thing on his face. It's a requirement.
Oh, This Means War came out in 2012, so it would have been that era Tom Hardy, which we will cover someday in the future, because that is a weird one.
All right, I like Tom Hardy.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.